I used to work at a Pizza Hut when I was in high school. I have had a lot of bizarre stories from working there, but this is the one that scared me the most. My Pizza Hut was the kind where you could only pick up the food, and there was also a wall between the store, front, and the kitchen, so if you were in the front of the store, you were pretty much on your own. The store itself was located in a kind of out of the way dead shopping center. Oh, and it was in Las Vegas. That should tell you a lot about the level of our clientele. For some reason, I've always got stuck on the late shift despite being in high school, so on most weekend nights, by 10 at night, it would be just me and one other cook in the store, twiddling our thumbs. I would hang out at the front, and the cook usually was way at the back of the store, out of earshot. One night I was hanging out behind the counter, and I saw this guy walk past. I didn't think much of it and went back to doing nothing while waiting for my shift to end. Then the door to the store opened. I looked up and realized it's the same guy who just went by. He's tall, but also like skeletally thin, and there is something not right about his eyes. But despite him putting me on edge, I get up and greet him and ask him what he'd like to order. Nothing. He just stands there in front of me, staring up at the ceiling, muttering to himself. I was only 17 and for the most part of a good kid despite living in a sin city, so I didn't really know what to make of it. Now, I would probably just chalk it up to drugs anyway. He is still standing there, vacant expression and muttering in what sounds like tongues. Then he abruptly spins around and just walks back out of the store without any acknowledging that I exist. I'm a nerd, but I shake it off and sit back down. It's getting towards the end of my shift, and I'm counting down the minutes when I realize somebody has walked back into the store. I look up, it's the same guy. Same creepy eyes, only this time he is holding a phone up to his ear. He's muttering unintelligibly, so I realize he's not talking to anyone. And worse, he's staring right at me, super intense and unblinking. At this point, I was starting to get frightened. He keeps looking at me, so I try to be polite and ask if I can help him. He starts walking towards the counter, still staring at me. Then suddenly, he asks in a perfectly normal voice if his order is ready. I'm mentally going, what the fuck? At this point, and not sure how to answer, so I go with the truth and tentatively point out to him that he didn't order anything when he first came into the store. He gets this bug-eyed look on his face and lunges to the counter. I jump back at this point, and my heart is pounding because this guy obviously is not at all in his right mind. I'm also afraid that he's going to pull out a knife or something and stab me. Then just abruptly, as he lunges, he yells, "God damn it!" Looks super confused / upset, like he's about to cry, and puts his head in his hands and starts pulling out his hair. I start to feel slightly bad at this point and ask as nicely and calmly as I can if he maybe wants to order something now. His head snaps back up, his expression is now completely blank, and he looks totally deranged. I'm holding totally still because I am afraid moving will set him off. Then thankfully the door to the store opens and a huge man walks in. He looks at this guy kind of confused, realizing that something's not right with him. The crazy guy looks at him, looks at me, and then starts backing up until he's out of the door. He starts walking towards the edge of the store front, looking at me the whole time, and then he goes past the edge of the store and is gone. The guy who walked in looks at me and asks, "What the hell was that?" I looked at him. I have no idea. I think he was crazy. I try to shake it off, but I'm totally on edge for the rest of my shift. When I clock out that night, I made one of the drivers walk out with me. Then I jumped in my car and I got out of there. I never saw that dude again, but it was a weird experience and pretty unnerving. I also am not sure what he would have done if that guy hadn't walked in when he did.
Two years ago, I moved to the UK for university, as I always wanted to go there and get away from my parents, as the situation at home was beginning to become too toxic for me. In first year at uni, I moved into a student accommodation and met some really great people. It was a good year without meeting my boyfriend, who I'm still with, and just enjoying my time away from my family and discovering what independence really meant. Anyhow, as second year came by, I decided with some friends to move into a house rented by student accommodations, but at least we had our own house and weren't restricted as much with noise and parties as living in a small shared flat like in first year. Note, I had a ground floor room, and my window gave into a very small backyard, in which I would go smoke every day, as I am a smoker, and in which there would be a very thin wooden door giving into the other side of the street, where you would put your bins and broken chairs, blah blah blah. The door could only be closed and locked from inside the backyard, but since it was an old door, we had to attach some strings to keep it closed for good. I had neighbors on each side of the house, so we were surrounded by families and some other student accommodations. The neighbors on the right of us were 5 boys, who looked way over the age of being in university. They were strange, so to say. I met one of them outside of our house one day because of a police intervention due to one of his flatmates attacking him, and the others with a kitchen knife and burning their kitchen down. I heard some screams, and so I went outside with my flatmates and saw one of them being covered in blood and cuts everywhere on his arm, and a wound on his head inflicted by a kitchen knife. Me and my flatmates didn't know what to do, so we offered him our help to clean himself and gave him an old t-shirt to change out of his bloody clothes. We then saw the guy who hurt these flatmates being escorted out by the police and into a van and driven off to be arrested. I don't know anything more about the story. The police didn't really tell us anything else. Anyway, the guy who we helped was quite weird. He said a lot of BS and kept trying to grab me and flirting with me. And we noticed when helping him he smoked quite a lot of marijuana, but just didn't really care at the moment, as we just wanted to make sure he was okay as we didn't know him. Then after some time had passed, I would go to uni and come back home and see him quite often in the street, and just never said a word to him again. But one day, he came up to me in the street while I went to the corner shop and started talking to me weirdly, and I didn't feel comfortable at all with that for some reason, so I just didn't respond to him. He then just said, "Oh, that's okay, I'll just wait in front of your house then and we can talk further." No need to say I was creeped out and just thought he was joking. So I bought my drink at the shop and headed back to my street. And as I turned into the street where my house was, I saw him with his flatmate sitting on my doorstep and waiting for me. So I panicked and went back next to the corner shop and called my only guy flatmate to ask him to open the door and tell the guys to go away. But obviously he wasn't home and no one else was either. So I literally just waited it out until they left 1H later and then sprinted back home and locked the front door. Note, my front door had a glass panel on it where you would be able to kind of make out who was standing in front of it. After this already pretty scary encounter, I just tried to avoid the guy and mostly succeeded for a while. But then one day, as I went smoking in the backyard, I noticed that the wooden door, which is always closed, was open, and the strings that we put there to keep it closed were cut off. For whatever reason, I didn't think anything of it, and just closed the door again and put a new string on it, thinking it was one of my flatmates who took the bins out and just didn't tie it back. The weird neighbors would very often scream and yell and fight in their house, and it would wake me and my flatmates up in the middle of the night, but we kinda got used to it after a while. But one evening, my boyfriend slept over like he usually did, and he, who usually never ever wakes up because of a noise, Woke up in the middle of the night because of a bang and some whispering. I was sound asleep, so he very silently woke me up, and we both just waited in the dark and listened for any other noises. Suddenly, we heard the wooden door just bang, just shot open, and some footsteps next to my window. I always had my window open because it would get really warm inside, so we both just froze. And then we heard the door leading to the backyard get shaken softly as if they were trying to get inside, and then they stopped. Luckily, we had the curtains closed so they couldn't see us, but we were ready to get dressed and get the F out of the room and lock them in if they came in from the window. Then we just heard my window move and get more open, and one of the guys saying something in a different language that we didn't understand, and started to hear them trying to get in. My boyfriend and I just shot up out of the bed, took my phone and put clothes on, and ran out of the room and out of the house. So I then called my flatmates and told them to lock themselves in their rooms, and then the police, who luckily came in less than 5 minutes as the headquarters were a couple of streets down from us. I don't remember anything after the police came. I think me and my boyfriend were in shock. They ended up catching one guy, the other fled and was later found a few streets up smoking weed. The police told us they went inside of their house and found a lot of meth and heroin, and that they were just carrying a massive kitchen knife with them. I was so confused, as I've never done anything to offend or do anything wrong to my neighbors, so the idea of them breaking in with God knows what intentions with a kitchen knife terrorized me and my boyfriend. The two guys ended up being arrested, and one of them was put in prison for 2 years for carrying a weapon with intention to harm. I never heard anything else from the police, and I moved back home a few months later, as I was so scared, and it tormented me for months on end, not knowing what would have happened if my boyfriend didn't wake up. I'm now still coping with it and finding it really tough to get over it. Of always asking myself, what if, and what would have happened if? I now very often wake up because of the slightest noise and get horrible nightmares because of it. But hey, at least I'm still with my boyfriend, and we often talk about it, and it helps a lot.
So I'm new to the whole Reddit community. I never really found any reason to be on here. That was until I had my own stalker experience that I find I need to share. This happened about a month ago and still gives me the creeps whenever I think about it. I was recently away from home, from the valley in Northern California. And where this all started, I was in the Bay where I had visited some family. I usually keep my Snapchat Bitmoji on ghost mode, since Snapchat created that whole Snap map feature whenever I'm in home or in my city. Just of constant fear of being followed to my house, etc. So whenever I'm away from home, I usually keep it on, since I'm nowhere by my house, so I never found it no need to worry about being followed. Going on with the story, I was in the Bay Area visiting family, and when we usually stay there 2 nights over the week, and last night I was there. My cousins all thought it would be fun if we went to a nightclub. Now, before anything else, I am a 19-year-old female, and there are legal 18 and over nightclubs in the Bay area, so I wasn't doing anything illegal. So my cousins and I, me being the only female and the rest being 4 boys, being my first actual time going into a nightclub, I was a little nervous at first. However, being the fact that I had my cousins with me, it wasn't that bad. The night went uneventful until I met him, dressed in all black with that black hair you would see on a punk rock guitar player. No offense to punk rock fans. I have my share of love for different bands. Anyways, we met eye contact a few times, but I brushed it off. As the night kept going on, I made my share of friends and we exchanged Snapchats. I was sitting on the lounge couches with a few female friends I made for the night. When they had gone to use the restroom, I should have went with them, but at the time I was just too tired, so I relaxed. When I felt a tap on my shoulder, I was a little shocked when I seen it was the guy in all black. I seen her. He smiled and sat next to me. Me being polite and willing to always give people a chance before judging them, I said, "Hi." He responded with a faint hello. I tried to create conversation, but he would only nod his head or give me one-worded answers, so at this point I was getting annoyed. I seen my new friends coming towards me, thinking he would go away. I focused all my attention towards my friends, and when it was time we had to leave, I got up and looked around and seen that he was in the chair next to me the whole time as we was. When he came up to me earlier, I immediately felt bad, since I thought he probably thought I ignored him, so I said, your friends never came? He said they never came when they invited them, and they said they would come. I felt worse for the kid and sat by him trying to create conversation, and that was until my phone went off with a notification from Snapchat, which was when I actually see him smile ear to ear and actually heard him speak louder this time. "Oh, you have a Snapchat?" He said. I said, "Yeah," in a response, "You mind if I add you?" Me making new friends all night and giving them my Snapchat, I wasn't hesitant at all, but big mistake later on. I ended up leaving shortly after, but that wasn't before he followed me and my cousins out of the club and watching us as we drove away with him smiling, waving at us. Creepy, I thought, but I figured it'd be the last time I ever see that kid again. I didn't really have to have anything to worry about later on at the hotel. I was just in a room. Me and my sister were in since my sister was only 13 and girls got their own room. It was about 1:30 in the morning when I got a Snapchat notification. It said, "Snapchat from emo_Sam." I never did catch his name, but I figured it was him, and my suspicions were correct. When I opened the snap, it was of him. I figured his name was Sam at this point. The picture was of him smiling with the caption saying, "Hi," with a smiley face at the end. I didn't think of anything bad of him still, so I sent a pic of the room saying, "What's up?" The next pic was just of a black screen with the caption saying, "Ooh, what hotel is that? It's nice." I knew better than to give him the name of my hotel, so I said I didn't know. He left me on red, and me figuring he probably fell asleep, I soon fell asleep myself. The next morning I woke up and had around 30 snaps from Sam. At first it was just showing just of his shoes walking down the street, but I got more concerned when I seen he was crossing some of the busiest streets. I thought he was going to get run over or something, but that thought soon got out of my mind when I came across a picture of a hotel. Not just any hotel, it was the hotel I was staying at, with the caption saying, "You're staying at this one, huh?" My blood ran cold when he started taking pics of the doors with the different room numbers with the caption, "I'ma find the room you're staying at." Soon enough, I seen my room number as well as the room number of my cousins and my brother and dad's room. The last snap was of outside the hotel again with the sunrise, when the sunrise was to hit, with the caption that said, "I'll try again tomorrow," with a winky face at the end. I was leaving that day, so I got some relief. I didn't remove him off because I had to pick up my things and making sure everything had all the possessions and taking a dip in the pool before we left, so I had forgotten all about it. We had gone to go visit with family, and then head home. Once we got home, I unpacked, cleaned up the house, and had dropped my siblings off at my mom's. And since I live with my dad, that night I took a shower and had fallen asleep. I was soon woken to my little 10-pound chihuahua growling at my window. I had shushed for him to be quiet, and he ran off to my dad's room with me drifting back to sleep, and was startled when I heard tapping on my window. I froze as in I didn't know what to do. I grabbed my phone only to find 2 snaps from Sam. It was then I froze. I started opening them. First it was of my hotel saying I wasn't there anymore. The next him in a car saying, I'm following you. All leading up to my bedroom window with the caption, I found you. After I opened the last snap, I heard in a soft voice from outside my window with the saying,
I know you're wrong.
I slowly crept out of my room and called the cops. The dispatcher, after telling her my story, saying the police are on the way and not to hang up the phone. That was when I hear full-on banging on my front door, screaming, let me in. At that point, I see flashing lights outside my house with my dad rushing down the hallway saying, what's going on? After a few minutes of explaining the situations to my dad, we hear a knock at the door. It was a police officer saying they attained Sam, and I gave him my statement, and the police told me he had admitted to them that he followed me from the Bay Area with bad intentions for me. I looked in the cop car before they took him away. Nothing but hate and evil within his eyes as they pulled him away. I learned that later that it was my SnapMap location being on and forgetting to turn it off when I got home. Now my location on Snapchat is always turned off no matter if I'm home or away from home. I since blocked Sam's account from Snapchat and don't hand out my Snapchat so easily and just to anyone anymore. Sam, I really doubt you'll read this on here, but I hope we don't meet again. And for someone else's sake, don't follow anyone else home.
Anyone who's ever worked a night shift job will tell you that it eventually gets old. I remember being really excited about starting my first night shift job. I thought it would be so cool, like that episode of SpongeBob with the hash-slinging slasher or something. It was nothing like that at all. In fact, it got plain old repetitive after a while. I'm a male nurse, and I had been working in a hospital nearby. It was a long commute and extremely unbearable. Once I finished my contract with the hospital, which was a year, I decided to apply for another job, one that was a little less stressful and disorganized as the hospital. I got a job at a child psychiatric unit. Working with children with mental illnesses seemed like a really cool job. Maybe cool isn't even the right word, but meaningful. The hospital left me with this feeling of trying to save people who were going to die anyway. But with these kids, I could make a real difference that might turn their life around, or find a way to let them cope with whatever is wrong with them. I was all around excited about it. The pay was even higher, which had me really excited too. The only problem was that the only shift available was night shift. The hiring manager told me that there might be a day shift position available within a couple of months, and I would be the first one to get it if it opened up, but that was about it. So there I was helping kids, at night. The only problem was that they were all asleep for the most part. The only time I got to do anything was when one of them woke up or started misbehaving. This very quickly became the most boring job I've ever worked in my life. About a month went by when something moderately frightening happened. It was a night like any other. I was sitting at my desk charting some stuff I'd done with the kids earlier that night. I heard a noise that I did not quite recognize at first. It sounded like some of the kids were wrestling or something. But on the bed, I got really anxious as I did not want to go in there and see the mentally handicapped kids having sex. Call me cynical, but that's where my mind went immediately. But when I got in there, I saw something that I don't think I can ever unsee. I turned the light on to see one of the older kids who was trying to smother another one. The kid that was doing the smothering had no previous incident of violent behavior. I didn't personally know these kids well enough because I didn't work during the day, but I knew their cases well enough that the kid doing the smothering had bipolar disorder. It was pretty severe, but he had never had a violent outburst like this. It was just so unusual. I immediately pulled him off the other kid, and then he started fighting me. He reached around his own head and punched me in the nose at a weird angle. This kid had to have been 11 or 12 years old, and I was honestly surprised at how much force he had behind his punch. He didn't break my nose or anything, but he definitely bloodied it up. My adrenaline kicked in after that, and I was able to restrain him without a problem. I called for a nurse from another unit in the building to come over and help me. It felt like it was forever waiting for this other nurse, but she got over within a few minutes. The entire time I was waiting, though, I couldn't help but to look at this little kid who had nearly murdered another kid. When the other nurse got over, we gave him some medication that would knock him out and put him to sleep. I asked the other nurse, Carla, what I was supposed to do. She was there for a few years before me, and I assumed she would have a good answer. We just did everything you can do. Violent outbursts don't get kids thrown out of here. I was a little shocked. I argued with her a little, but that was that. I tried talking to the kid that was being smothered, and he didn't have a whole lot to say about it. He said that he didn't really know the other kid that well, but they never had a negative incident up until this night. This was a few years back now, and I cannot ever forget how I almost watched that kid die. If I had been just a few minutes later, he probably would be dead right now. It wasn't long after that experience that I started looking for another job. I got one a few weeks later and did my best to explain the situation to my case manager. She didn't seem to understand or care, but that's not my problem anymore.
A few years ago, I was using Tinder to meet friends and find a partner, which now I realize was a bad idea. I would swipe right on everyone, hoping to find someone to talk to and just a friend, as I was kind of a loner with no friends and homeschooled. I remember meeting a funny girl who I will name Katie for this story. Katie started the conversation with memes and funny jokes and pickup lines. Me being someone who needed anyone to talk to was filled with excitement. We talked for a few hours, and Katie ended up wanting my Snapchat username. I agreed and sent it to her, hoping she wasn't fake or a man using a fake picture catfishing others. Katie added me and sent a picture of her face. To my excitement, Katie was real and just as beautiful as her pictures. After a week of talking, Katie started asking me personal questions that kind of raised red flags: where I live and what my address was. Why I lived with my family. I never sent Katie my address, but in my head, red flags started raising that she would often guess what I was wearing, or she would tell me she likes my Blink 182 shirt. Before I had even snapped her a picture, I remember always feeling like I was being watched and always looked over my shoulder, not knowing about the Snap Map update at the time. I didn't think anything of it. A few days later, Katie had posted to her Snapchat story. Now, before I go any further, I want to mention Katie lived in a town 45 miles north of me. Anyway, Katie posted a picture of a playground park to her Snapchat story earlier in the day. Me doing the usual skipping all my friends' stories, didn't realize what I saw. An hour later, she had sent me a Snapchat of her at the park along with the caption, "I see your house from here." To my disbelief, I realized she was at the park that was about a 3-minute walk from my house. Panicking, I responded asking where she was. She responded with the name of my city. Asking her what she was doing here, she had stated that she wanted to surprise me and see me. I had asked her how she knew where I lived, and she said that she had her connections Now, I wasn't looking for a relationship with Katie. She was a nice gal, but not someone I'd be in a relationship with, especially since Katie had an 18-month-old daughter. I told Katie I was a little creeped out by her knowing where I live without me ever telling her. That had made her really upset. Katie started arguing with me and telling me how I didn't appreciate her taking the time to surprise me. Keep in mind, we didn't plan a date, or was I interested in a relationship with her. I remember Katie saying something really rude to the point where I had blocked her. A few hours later, I had ran to McDonald's with my father to get dinner for my family. As we were ordering, I felt my stomach drop and felt a cold breeze overcome my body. I felt something off as I had turned around and saw Katie standing behind me looking insanely upset. I quickly turned back around and pretended I didn't see her. I hear my name come from her mouth and my father looks confused. I turn around and walk up to her and she chews me out again, asking why I blocked her. I being a really nice person, giving people the benefit of doubt, I unblocked her and gave her a hug, stating I was busy with my family today. As soon as I got home, she had snapped me saying she would see me soon later this week. Again, I had blocked her because she had creeped me out. A week goes by and nothing heard from Katie. That was until I was cleaning up and went to take the trash outside. As I opened my door, I was stunned to see Katie inside a car in front of my house. Freaked out, I dropped the trash bag and slammed the door. To this day, I don't know what she intended to do or what she wanted, but my advice to anyone reading this, always check to see if your Snapchat location is on or not.
This is my first time posting on Reddit, and I'm not the best writer, but this subreddit reminded me of something that happened a while ago. Please excuse if this story jumps around a bit because it's honestly confusing for me still, and I'm the one it happened to. About 2 years ago, when I was 17, I received a Facebook message from someone named Dan who I didn't recognize. I had mutual friends with him, and he looked to be around the same age as me, so I wasn't alarmed. What follows is the messages. Dan: hello, how have you been? Haven't seen you in a few years. Me: hi, not trying to be rude, but do we know each other? Dan: yeah, you really don't know me? I didn't respond. Dan: wow, real nice way to treat a family friend. Me: sorry, I just don't recognize you. Dan then sent a picture of me and him together from when we were little. And I mean, really little, like I looked maybe 2, 3 and he looked 5, 6. Me: oh wow, did our parents used to be friends or something? Dan: I was your neighbor. You really don't recognize me. Come on, I didn't move that long ago. He had in fact moved a long time ago, at least 12 years ago. So I honestly feel like it's not that uncommon for me to not recognize someone who I hadn't seen or talked about since I was like 4. Anyways, the conversation continued like that. I apologized for not remembering him and just started catching up. He was being nice enough and I was bored, so whatever. No harm, no foul. After we kept talking, I started remembering more about him. Like I remembered him coming over and swinging in my backyard and me going over to his house with my big brother and all of us hanging out together. Dan was a few years older than me, at least 2, but I can't remember exactly. Anyways, we kept talking on Facebook, just messaging back and forth about normal things until it started to get late and I was tired and had school the next day, so I told him I was going to bed. I closed my computer and just laid down and went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to a bunch of messages from him. Things like, good night, beautiful, sweet dreams, message me when you wake up, are you asleep yet? Can't wait to talk to you. Literally, there was almost 50 messages. In a way, I was kind of flattered that I was getting that much attention, but like more than anything, I was creeped out. I opened the messages, kind of glanced through them, and just didn't reply. On my phone, I have it set where I don't get notifications from Facebook Messenger. At the time, I was in a lot of group chats with different team sports and groups of friends, so it was just easier to, at the end of the day, check my messages versus getting a ton of notifications all day long. Some point during the day, I had gotten more messages from him that I just hadn't noticed while I was at school. He was saying stuff like, do you still live at insert address here? I did still live there. Does your mom still freak out about you hanging with boys? What? No, my mom never has freaked out over boys. Let's go out and catch up. Let me take you out and treat you right. It just kept going on and on, really random questions that weren't necessarily threatening, but just somewhat creepy, and then him talking about wanting to go on dates. He didn't even live in the same state anymore that I live in, so I have no idea how he would have planned on going on dates with me. The messages just kept continuing over the next week, him telling me that he wants to go on dates and asking me really weird questions about my mom, my brother, and my house. And then he started asking about his house that he used to live in. I didn't reply to any of his messages, but I was getting at least 50 a day. I'm not sure why I didn't block him. I think I was kind of entertained in a way, like I thought it was funny. Eventually, I brought it up to my mom and just asked her if she remembered Dan from next door. Her face completely drained of color and she got super serious. All of a sudden, she asked me why I was bringing him up. I told her that he had messaged me on Facebook and was trying to get me to go out on a date with him and was just trying to catch up. I didn't tell her he'd been messaging me 50+ times a day and that I wasn't responding at this point. She told me to block him and never message him again. I asked her why, and this is a summary of what she told me. When I was 3, 4, I used to play over at his house a lot. His mom would always offer to babysit me if my mom had to quick go out and run errands, and he also had a little sister who was around my age. So my mom figured it was a perfect opportunity for a play date between Dan, my brother, me, and Dan's little sister. One day when I came home after one of these play dates, my mom is asking me and my brother what we had done that day. My brother started talking about how he had watched some movie, I don't know what one. And I apparently told my mom that Dan had brushed my hair for me. My mom thought that was a little weird. What 6-year-old boy's gonna want to brush a 3-year-old girl's hair? So she asked a couple more questions. She doesn't really remember the details, and I don't really remember them either, saying I was a toddler. But somehow it came out that he wasn't brushing my hair. He had been taking a brush and was rubbing it all over my body while I was only in my undies. I'm not going to get more explicit than that, and no, nothing more serious happened, thank God. It was more just weird than anything. My brother didn't know anything about this because we had been in Dan's room and my brother had been in the living room with Dan's little sister. After that, my mom didn't let me go back over to his house. Apparently, when my mom confronted his mom about it, a huge fight broke out, not physically, but a screaming match. It turns out that Dan had been doing similar stuff to his little sister, but it had escalated farther than it had with me. My mom threatened to report them to the police or Child Protective Services. She did both. But before much could be done, they moved out and found somewhere else to live. They were renting the house. After hearing that from my mom, I immediately blocked Dan on Facebook. I wasn't quick enough, I guess, however, because he messaged a bunch of my friends on Facebook asking about me and had changed his relationship status to taken and in a relationship with me. He then followed me on Instagram and found my Snapchat somehow. He liked and commented on almost all of my Instagram pictures and sent me a bunch of Snapchats. I have a feeling you can guess the kinds of pictures. I quickly blocked him on both, and luckily he never figured out my phone number. I haven't heard from him since and haven't heard anything about him but Dan. Let's not meet again. I worked at a museum a couple of years back, maybe a decade ago now. I was a night shift security guard. It was as boring as you could imagine. But I desperately needed the money and it paid a few dollars more than any other job I could land, so I figured why not. I remember landing a construction job a year into working this night shift security job. I enjoyed construction a lot more and I desperately needed to get my life back on track. Being on night shift really messed with my mood and general well-being. The construction job I got had roughly the same pay, so it was a no-brainer even if I had to do a little bit more manual labor. As much as I disliked the job itself, I really liked all of the people that worked at that museum. They were actually really cool. I went ahead and gave them my 2 weeks notice and told them that I would stick around for as long as they needed me to find a replacement. They hired some skinny pale guy named Justin. When I first met him, he seemed like he was a decent enough guy. After all, it really wasn't my problem once I left. After a couple of shifts with him, though, I noticed that he was an extremely awkward and very strange person. He did this thing where he would change the tone of his voice mid-sentence. It was really strange, and it almost made me feel like he had some kind of mental issue. Trust me, I wasn't being judgmental or anything, and if you heard it yourself, you would probably have had the same concern. Not that I thought that he was dangerous or anything, just a little out there with a possible mental illness. Maybe even a speech impediment. Anyway, it was my third or fourth shift training him, and it was an ordinary night just like any other. As weird as he may have been, he seemed somewhat depressed or sad. I caught on pretty easily as he did not make much of an effort to conceal it. We were making the usual trip throughout the entire museum, which was honestly a pretty long walk. We were probably about 10 minutes into it when I finally just asked him why he seemed so sad. He told me that he was really lonely and couldn't get a girlfriend. Again, if you had one look at this guy, you would understand why he couldn't get a girlfriend, let alone his very weird personality. I tried telling him that there were plenty of fish in the sea and that he could probably have some luck on the internet. Online dating wasn't as big back then. He kind of shrugged his shoulders and just continued being sad. I didn't know what else I could tell him. After that point, he gradually became weirder and weirder with each passing night. It was really strange. For instance, he would start going on these massive monologues about the most random things in the world. I only had to stay for a couple more shifts, but it honestly became really intolerable being around this guy. There was one night where he talked for at least 15 entire minutes about the environmental harm of pizza crust. Yes, literally pizza crust. It made absolutely no sense in the world. I tried interrupting him a couple of times to ask what was up, but he just cut me off and even started ignoring me after a certain point. When you are completely alone in a massive building with one other person, oh, trust me, when I say that their mental well-being is very important. I gradually began feeling more and more unsafe in the presence of this weird guy. Justin seemed like he was going crazy or something. Thankfully, my last shift with him went by decently enough. It was still awkward and moderately unbearable, but it was at least over. I started my new job and everything seemed to be going really well. I had completely forgotten about Justin and life seemed to move on. I didn't really think about that security job anymore at all. That was until I heard about an interesting story from my friend a few months later. I still kept in touch with a few people from the museum that worked there during the day. We were only Facebook friends, but that was enough for me. One of them messaged me to ask me what I thought about the guy that replaced me, Justin. I was honest with her and told her that I thought Justin was a really strange guy and possibly insane or something. She typed back, "You're going to love this story then." She then proceeded to tell me about Justin being fired for completely destroying an entire exhibit on night shift. I guess they came in at the morning shift and found him trying to put it back together. They watched the security footage and this guy literally tried fighting a dinosaur skeleton. I guess he had been acting really weird that night, judging by what she told me about the rest of the security footage. But the interesting part of the story is that they somehow found out he was on antipsychotic medication. They figured that he had stopped taking his medication. That was all my friend knew. And that's all I know. It's really scary how people can just stop taking their very necessary medication on a whim and then have a complete mental breakdown. I started wondering if he had been off his meds when I met him. All I know is that I'm kind of happy I don't ever have to see Justin again.
Back a couple years ago in 2020, I met this girl on Snapchat from the town next to me. To give some backstory, I live on a border town close to Canada. It's a small, well-knit community. Lots of the attention in the town comes from the Canadian tourists passing through to go shopping on our side of the border. I'm a soldier in the army, and we got told we were going to deploy back in 2021. We didn't know how long that we were going to deploy. Before we left, I met this girl that randomly added me on Snapchat. It occasionally happened, but most of the time it came to be that they were just friends of friends, and that's normal. This girl was something other than ordinary. She found out where I lived, and to make it more weird, she found my phone number. When I deployed, I would get random messages and FaceTime calls. People not knowing it's 9 hours ahead of time, they would call in the middle of the night. For me, was a pretty normal thing, but getting random FaceTimes almost on the weekly, sometimes daily, was quite unusual. I only later came to find out that the calls and messages were from her after she had found my mailing address for overseas. She would send me letters and random things. The guys in my squad were pretty creeped out by this, and so was I. If I'm going to be honest, this went on for months before I had finally told her to stop and quit trying to contact me. I made up some lame excuses and then tried to top it with "I'm engaged." It took time, but she finally quit. She kept trying to meet me after I came home. If you're reading this out there, please never contact me again. Let's both just go our separate ways. So me and my boyfriend like going out dancing on the weekend, which always ends with us stumbling into our favorite pizza place before joining the taxi queue. We've done this most weekends for over a year now, so I have become somewhat friendly with the guys who own the pizzeria. They know us by name and always make a big fuss over us and offer us a discount every time. Now here's where it gets freaky. Last night, a Saturday night, at 11 p.m., my boyfriend and I were in bed because we both had work this morning. My phone started ringing, which was weird for that time of night, and I saw it was an unknown number, so I ignored it. Next thing we know, there's someone knocking on the front door. All the lights in the house were off, so we were clearly in bed or not in. I had another call from the same number, and then the person knocking started hammering on the door, flickering the letterbox. My boyfriend got up to answer it, even though I was a bit shaken up, and I warned him not to. If I had been alone in the house, I never would have answered. So he goes downstairs to answer the door, and lo and behold, it's one of the guys from the pizzeria ordering 2 freshly cooked pizzas that we didn't order. He said not to tell the other guys at the shop, but they were a gift from him to us, his favorite customers. My boyfriend took them from him and thanked him, but we couldn't get back to sleep for us. We felt so odd about it. We've have ordered from there once for a takeaway, so that's clearly how he got our address and my phone number, but it's still weird, right?
This happened to me many years ago, which is about spiritualism via playing with a Ouija board. When I was about 15 years old, some childhood friends and I were quite fascinated with paranormal things like ghosts, private base phenomena such as UFOs, etc. We would sometimes venture out to such places to try and counter things. Mind you, we are talking about the mid to late 90s, when intelligent phones did not exist but digital gadgets were on the cusp of breakthrough. Anyways, one day a friend and I, during summer vacation, decided to get a Ouija board and go to another best friend's house and play with it. Everything went according to plan. In the morning, we met up, obtained a Ouija board from a local supermarket, and went to our friend's house in the neighborhood we all grew up in. We gathered in his bedroom, turned the lights off, lit a couple candles, and asked it questions. It moved slightly, but really never got any type of full-on encounter or experience. So we said whatever, and continued the day of hanging out and enjoying each other's company during summer vacation, typical teenage summer vacation fun. But this is where the crazy stuff began. Around a week or so later, I was at my house laying down on my bed in my bedroom around 8 p.m. I was just laying down, relaxing, listening to music. Then all of a sudden I heard footsteps run up my bedroom wall outside of the house and then run across the roof quite quickly. Now my bed was against the wall, and I literally heard the footsteps run up the same wall outside of where my bed was against, and it sounded like a child running quickly. That was the length and span of each step, and it sounded like the entity was bipedal and running really fast. I then was quite surprised and didn't know what to do. I then went to the kitchen where my mom was washing the dishes, and I asked if my stepdad was on the roof doing some type of maintenance, and my mom was surprised at the question and said, "No, he's not up on the roof." I then returned to my room and thought about it for a while. Eventually, I forgot about it. Shortly after, I recall late at night when everyone was asleep, I would suddenly feel fear out of nowhere in my room and suddenly get paralyzed. It was crazy because when I felt the fear, it felt like a super fast rush of wind would race towards me and fill me, enter my being, and I would be paralyzed. My eyes rolled back all the way, and it was a level of fear and rage that I cannot describe in human words that would fill my whole being. Such incident would begin to happen about once a week and evolve to 2, 3 times a week for about 4 years throughout high school. Then it got to a point where one night I sensed the same fear enter my room while my whole family was asleep in their respective rooms, and again, such entity rushed and entered my body. My body arched, and then I felt myself levitate to the ceiling where my nose almost touched the ceiling. Then my body slowly returned back to the bed. I remember feeling everything and being able to see even though my eyes were rolled to the back of my eye sockets. I was able to feel the bed sheets over my body and hanging, and I was able to see how I was levitating nearer to the ceiling and everything. There was another incident where the same thing happened, and while I was paralyzed in such state, I remember using all my force and energy and moved my head toward the door of my bedroom, because while I was paralyzed, it was super hard to move any body part, let alone my mouth to scream for help or anything. And after looking at the bedroom door, in an attempt to run and escape such horrifying experience, I mustered up as much energy and motivation possible, and I tried leaping off my bed to run for the door. What I'm about to describe is unbelievable, but I am speaking from first-hand experience. And my inner self, soul or spirit, jumped out of my body and I hit the floor. I then started crawling to the door and was going to reach for the doorknob. But then I looked back to the bed and saw my body paralyzed with my eyes rolled back. I couldn't believe it. Then all of a sudden, my soul's spirit rushed back to my body and the entity left my body. The word terrifying does not begin to describe what one feels in such experiences. There were other nights where my mom, stepdad, and siblings would go grocery shopping at night, and I would stay at home watching TV. And while in the living room, I would hear about 15, 20 feet away from the living room, down the hall were the 3 bedrooms of the house, where I would hear one doorknob of one of the rooms turning and letting go, turning and letting go. Obviously, no one was in the house, and I would feel a presence back there, but did not dare to go investigate. I remember calling one of my best friends on the phone to distract my attention from that. Also, when those things were happening, every time I laid down on my bed sideways at night with my back facing the room and my face towards the wall, I would always hear people whispering in the room right behind me, and when I turned around to see, the whispers stopped. It would happen so much that I stopped laying down sideways to sleep, or if I laid down sideways, my face would be towards the room and my back against the wall. I can describe so many more experiences, but I would have to turn this into a book with chapters. LOL. Thankfully, years have passed. I am a full-grown man now, and those experiences and entity have dwindled away. I started going to church and it all faded away. To conclude, my word of advice is never dabble with a Ouija board.